Marcus Bennett sat alone in the corner booth of La Bellevue, watching couples drift past the frosted windows like ghosts from another lifetime. At 58, he had built an empire that stretched across 3 continents, but the restaurant felt emptier than any boardroom ever had. His sister Rachel had begged him for months. Just one more date, Marcus. One last try. He had finally agreed, if only to prove what he already knew. Some men were meant to build dynasties, not families. The reservation was for 7. At 7:15, he signaled for the check. Then the door opened. She moved through the restaurant like a question mark, her cream-colored dress simple and elegant, her eyes scanning the room with something between hope and resignation. When their gazes met, she didn't smile the practiced smile of someone trying to impress. She simply walked over, clutching a worn leather handbag. Elena Torres was 53, though she carried herself with the quiet grace of someone who had learned that age was just another story the world told. She slid into the booth across from him, slightly breathless. "I'm sorry I'm late," she said. "My daughter called from college. First semester anxiety. I couldn't rush her off the phone." Marcus felt his rehearsed exit line dissolve. Most women he met lately either wanted to fix him or spend his money. Elena looked like she had simply shown up because she promised someone she would. "Your sister Rachel is very persuasive," Elena continued, a slight smile playing at her lips. "She volunteers at the community center where I teach art classes. She seemed to think we might understand each other." "Rachel has always been overly optimistic," Marcus replied, but his tone lacked its usual edge. They ordered without looking at the menu, both choosing the simplest items. As the waiter left, an awkward silence settled between them. Then Elena did something unexpected. She pulled out a small sketchbook from her bag and placed it on the table. "I hope you don't mind," she said. "I'm a terrible conversationalist on first dates. I thought maybe I could show you something instead of trying to impress you with words." She opened the book. Inside were drawings of ordinary moments, an elderly couple sharing a park bench, a child feeding pigeons, a man sleeping on a subway train with a smile on his face. Each sketch was accompanied by a few handwritten lines. "After my husband died 6 years ago," Elena explained quietly, "I couldn't paint anymore. Everything felt too big, too permanent. So I started carrying this little book. I sketch strangers and imagine their stories. It reminds me that everyone is carrying something. Everyone is more than they appear." Marcus stared at a drawing of a businessman standing in the rain, without an umbrella, arms outstretched. Beneath it, she had written, "Sometimes surrender looks like victory." "You drew this?" he asked. "Last Thursday," she nodded, "outside the courthouse." He looked so relieved, like he had finally let go of something heavy. Marcus felt something crack inside his chest. He had stood in that exact spot last Thursday, after finalizing his 3rd divorce. He had thought he was alone. "That was me," he said softly. Elena's eyes widened. She looked down at the sketch, then back at him. "I wrote the story before I knew the truth." They talked until the restaurant staff began stacking chairs. Marcus told her about building his company from nothing after his father's factory closed, about working 18-hour days to prove that failure wasn't genetic. Elena shared how she had raised 2 daughters on a teacher's salary after her husband's heart attack, how she had discovered that love wasn't about grand gestures, but about showing up every single day. As they stood on the sidewalk outside, a light snow began to fall. Marcus realized he couldn't remember the last time he had talked to someone without negotiating something. "Would you like to walk?" he asked. They wandered through the old district where Marcus had grown up, past row houses with warm lights in the windows. Elena listened as he pointed out his childhood home, now a coffee shop. He had bought the building years ago, but never gone inside. "Why not?" she asked. "Because some doors are better left closed," he said. "Too many ghosts." Elena stopped walking. "Or maybe you're afraid that going back will make you feel again. And feeling is harder than building." Her words struck him like a bell ringing in an empty chapel. They stood there in the falling snow, 2 people who had spent decades constructing walls around wounds. Over the following months, Marcus and Elena built something neither had expected, a friendship that slowly became more. She showed him her world of community centers and art classes, of Sunday dinners with her daughters and their families. He showed her his, taking her to gallery openings and quiet restaurants where they talked until closing time. Elena never asked him to change. She simply existed beside him, sketching in her little book, reminding him that life was happening in the moments he usually rushed past. One evening, nearly a year after their first meeting, Marcus took her back to that coffee shop in his old building. They sat by the window where his childhood bedroom had once been. He told her about his father, about shame and anger and the desperate need to prove the world wrong. "You did prove them wrong," Elena said gently. "But Marcus, who are you still trying to prove it to?" He looked at her weathered hands, at the silver threading through her hair, at the kindness in her eyes that had never wavered. And he finally understood what his sister had known all along, that the strongest thing a man can build is not an empire, but the courage to let someone see him completely. That night, Marcus made a promise. Not to Elena, but to himself. He would stop running from the boy he had been. He would learn that success measured in love was the only kind that lasted. They married the following spring in a small ceremony at the community center where they had met. Marcus's employees were shocked to see the demanding seal crying during his vows. But Elena just smiled and held his hand, the way she had held it through every hesitation and fear. Now at 60, Marcus still runs his company, but he leaves at 5 every day. He and Elena teach art classes together on weekends. And in his office, framed on the wall where his awards used to hang, is a sketch from Elena's book. Two people sitting in a restaurant, the space between them filled with possibility. Beneath it, in her handwriting, "Sometimes the bravest thing we do is show up. If this story touched your heart, please share, and subscribe. Leave a comment below telling me about a time when someone's kindness changed your perspective. Your stories matter, and I'd love to hear them.